Welcome to the Unlocking the Club podcast, where we host honest and direct conversations about journeys of access, personal truth, and reclaiming space. We share our truth so that you can find the key to own your truth, honor your journey, and reclaim your space. Grab your keys, your wallet, your phone, and invite your friends to meet you at the club. Here's your host, Angela Taylor.
Hey everyone, I'm Angela Taylor, your host with Unlocking the Club. And today we're going to unlock the club on fibroid tumors and Black women in honor of Fibroid Awareness Month this July. And this is a topic that is near and dear to me, as we're going to share some information and experiences that I actually wish I had access to earlier in my life. So to tell you a little bit, I'm a pretty private person, but I think it's really important for me to share my story with you all. And then you'll understand why this conversation in this particular moment in time is extremely important. So there was a 4-year period for me between 2010 and 2014, and it should have been the most exciting time in my life. I had made the decision to leave corporate America and was exercising my entrepreneurial muscle, a muscle that I'd been ignoring for years. And while I was enjoying the pursuit of my entrepreneurial dreams and building a consulting firm, those 4 years were some of the most isolating and debilitating years of my life. So at about the age of 39 was the first time I noticed that there was something going on with my reproductive system. There was a lot of discomfort that I was experiencing, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. And frankly, as I think many Black women I've talked to experience, is we ignore our health. We prioritize others' health. We are the first to quickly advise our friends and family about going to see the doctors, but we don't necessarily prioritize our own health. And that's certainly something that I didn't do at that time. And frankly, I didn't address it for another 3 years. And that included several painful months, months where I suffered in silence to a certain extent. I was embarrassed. I didn't quite understand what was going on. I thought it was normal to a certain extent, and that I shouldn't complain. As someone who has that athlete mentality, right? You get through pain. It's a challenge that you overcome, and you take some pride in being able to navigate pain. So the painful cramps I was experiencing for those 3 or 4 years, the excessive periods I was having, I just ignored those symptoms and tried to continue living my life. But the symptoms were things that I couldn't ignore. One of the early symptoms that I didn't understand, that was when I could not go long without eating ice, right? I was constantly craving ice. And I mean craving ice. I ate it all the time. There would be times if my ice machine at home was running out of ice, that I would go down the street to a gas station or a fast food restaurant and try to get a cup of ice. I would get enough cups of ice that I would put in the freezer so I had enough in those moments that I needed it. Crazy, right? My periods would last 10 days or more on a regular basis. Sometimes it felt like the period would end and just a couple of days later, the next period would start. And these weren't normal periods. These were periods that were excessive. I was gushing blood. And it felt like every hour on the hour, I was changing both the tampon and the pad that I was wearing. And I got to tell you, I'm going to pause here and say, I'm not used to talking about this publicly. Again, I'm a really private person, but it's important to know, because I know that there's women out there that are having a similar experience and they think it's just them. They think there's something wrong with them. And I want to normalize this to let you know that it happens quite often, probably more frequently than you think. And there's a lot of people, again, as I was, suffering in silence as I was going through these symptoms. I also always had this sense of, particularly in the middle of the night, I had this sense of I had to go to the restroom. Felt like my bladder was always full. And as the symptoms progressed and the fibroids started to grow and increase in number, I had a lot of back pain. I had pain in my hip, and it felt kind of like, as an athlete, I experienced sciatica. And so I had some shooting pains down my right leg quite often. And then the thing that was really frustrating was I had a lot of nausea and constipation, frankly. And it was awful. And I just remember like I had to adjust my life around this condition. And I had to adjust my life was, I was doing all the research. I knew I had fibroids, but I didn't have insurance at the time. This was before the Obamacare was available. I, again, was an entrepreneur running my own business, couldn't afford insurance at the time. And so I chose to, again, just treat the symptoms versus going to get help. And I remember that I would literally dictate my schedule around this. So I had to be close to a restroom or facility. I couldn't go too far on hikes. Like I would go on hikes with friends. I wouldn't let them know what was going on, but I was in pain. I remember being in Sedona, Arizona, beautiful Sedona, taking a couple hikes with some friends on vacation, and I was miserable. And I'm sure they didn't know why I was in such a bad mood, but I was miserable because I was in so much pain. And over the course of these 3 or 4 years, the more physical activity I had, the higher my blood temperature got, the more I would have cramps and the more discomfort I was in. In the mornings, I actually had to structure when I would eat food. Before I realized it, I would eat breakfast, maybe go work out and take a shower. And as my body temperature rose, I would have this sense of nausea, right? And was throwing up all the time. And so I had to adjust that. I would work out, take a shower, and then eat, and eat after my body temperature was lowered. And we'll talk to the doctor about this to see if that is normal as well. But by the time I could no longer suffer in silence, I actually was able to rectify the situation. And one of the reasons I was able to do so is due to a special guest that we're going to have on today's show, Teresa Edwards. Teresa Edwards is a legend in women's basketball, really in sports around the globe. And I was reading an article from a paper in Tulsa while Teresa was coaching in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she actually shared her story. She talked about having a similar journey with uterine fibroids and a treatment and a process that she'd gone through to alleviate the pain. And that was life-changing, to read that article, to see myself and to understand that, look, I should no longer continue to suffer in silence. And eventually I was introduced to the doctor that Teresa worked with, Dr. John Lipman MD, who will actually be on the show today as well. And I remember in our first conversations, a couple things showed up, right? I needed to have both an MRI and the doctor had said, look, like I had lost so much blood over the years that I was close to needing a transfusion. Like if I had waited any longer, I might have been in the hospital because I was so anemic and had lost so much blood over the years. With the MRI, the doctor was able to see that I basically had, that I looked like I was 5 months pregnant. I had over 50 fibroids in my belly. Some were pressing on my lungs because they had nowhere else to go. Some were pressing on my bladder and my hips, and that was leading to all that discomfort. Now, the doctor told me there's a couple options that you have. And in a lot of the research I had done, most doctors were prescribing a hysterectomy. I was in my late 30s, early 40s, and I still thought I wanted to have children. So I didn't want to have a hysterectomy. And so the doctor said, if you go into most places, and choose to have the myomectomy, if the doctor goes in and sees how severe your situation may be when they're operating, they actually may go ahead and conduct a hysterectomy. So you may wake up having had a hysterectomy. But here's this amazing process and procedure, the uterine fibroid embolization, that is non-invasive and that sends you home at the end of the day. And that gets you up and on your feet much sooner than having a hysterectomy or a myomectomy. And I got to tell you, it was life-changing. And that's the conversation we're going to have today. We're going to talk about women suffering in silence and the story and the journey and why we made those choices. And then we're going to actually talk to the doctor about what we should know. We're going to demystify some of the myths that are out there and talk about treatment options. And then we're going to have a great conversation just about what's next and any advice that we would have for those of you that may be listening to this conversation. So I'm really excited about this discussion. I'm actually wearing white today in honor of Fibroid Awareness Month and in honor of the fact that I can actually wear white now after having that treatment. There were 3 or 4 years where I chose not to wear white pants. And again, this treatment was life-changing for me. So today on Unlocking the Club, our special guest will be Dr. John Lipman and a really special guest, my sister angel, if you will, Teresa Edwards. On today's episode of Unlocking the Club, I am thrilled to be in conversation with Dr. John Lipman, the doctor who conducted a procedure that literally changed my life for the better, and Teresa Edwards, the Hall of Famer who introduced me to Dr. Lipman. Dr. John Lipman is the world's leading uterine fibroid specialist and uterine fibroid embolization expert. His training at Georgetown, Harvard, and Yale provided the perfect foundation for his vast experience in uterine fibroid embolization, or UFE. He has performed more UFE procedures than any other physician, and patients from around the globe continue to seek his expertise. In 2005, Dr. Lipman, who is best known for his pioneering work in the non-surgical treatment of uterine fibroids, started his own private practice, the Atlanta Fibroid Center, where he and his team also treat a number of other medical conditions seen in women, such as fallopian tubal infertility and migraine headaches. A critical aspect of Dr. Lipman's mission includes educating the public and other physicians about uterine fibroids, UFE, and the treatment of uterine fibroids. He's been invited to speak about UFE on national media outlets such as CNN, The Doctors, CNBC, JET, The Wall Street Journal, and WebMD, to name a few. As a result of his commitment to this work, Dr. Lipman was named the Healthcare Physician Hero of the Year from the Atlanta Business Chronicle and Trailblazer of the Year award recipient from the Atlanta Medical Association, representing the interests and concerns for African American physicians and their patients. After 4 years suffering from uterine fibroids, I was blessed to be introduced to Dr. Lipman by our next guest, Teresa Edwards. Teresa Edwards is a global sports legend and one of the most decorated athletes in Olympic team history. A 5-time Olympian, winning 4 gold medals and 1 bronze medal during her Olympic run, Teresa is a pioneer of women's basketball and an advocate for women in sports. She's been inducted into the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame, the International Basketball Federation, the USOC Olympic Hall of Fame, and the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, among others. She was also placed 22nd on Sports Illustrated's list of the 100 greatest female athletes of the 20th century. The sports icon is also an author, teacher, poet, and coach. A talented writer and poet, Teresa authored an autobiographical audiobook entitled Black Gold about her basketball career with a focus on her Olympic experiences, and recently self-published her poetry in a book titled Dream with Faith Legacy Poetry. Thanks for tuning in as we unlock the club with our special guests, Dr. John Lipman, MD, and Teresa Edwards. All right, we are back on Unlocking the Club with Teresa Edwards, the legend. Teresa, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Angela. Great to see you.
Great to see you. It's been way too long.
Yes.
Well, this is such an important conversation that we're having, and I am grateful to you for many reasons. First, for 10 years ago or so, of actually sharing your story publicly, because I know it impacted me when I read that story and changed my life. And I'm sure others that had access to that as well. But also it's great to just be in conversation with you today so that we can have this conversation on Unlocking the Club and truly unlock women's wellness and healthcare. What have you been up to over the last few years, and why was it important for you to actually speak out on your condition?
First of all, I'm very blessed. Listening to your introduction into the story, we had the similar experiences with fibroids. Mine experience was a little different because it was so unknown. The resources, just the knowledge about what was going on with my body was so scary to me. So I'll get back into that. But currently, I'm in New York. I'm teaching. I'm coaching. I'm growing old in the game. Never thought I would enjoy coaching, but really tremendously enjoying teaching kids and watching them learn where they are and passing them on to other people. But the thrill of coaching has hit me finally. So that there is really carrying me through a phase of I can sit down and write about life. I can enjoy looking out the window, and I love being near the water. So you can tell I'm getting older.
Absolutely. We all are, but right. It's like
Yeah.
fine wine, aging well for sure. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate the fact that you've always been a great writer. Like I've been lucky to read some of the things that you've written in the past. And I think one of the things that compels me is how you've transitioned from being an elite athlete, being the best of the best around the globe and known for that, to now finding what's next for you.
Right.
And so
Right.
can you unlock that? What has that journey been like for you?
That journey for me is not trying to reinvent the wheel, but tapping into my talents and continually to tap into the gifts that I feel like I was blessed with. And I'm fine. It's like a rebirth every time I do something different. And sometimes I like surprise myself with the things I do, but I'm not one that easily say no to new experiences. I embrace it. And I know the world is forever changing and evolving, and of course, new generations upon generations. As a player, I had to adjust to every generation. Playing in 5 Olympics, the next one will not be the same. Although I was chasing that same fun, that same gold medal podium and things of that nature, I think I learned to just adjust the same way in life as it comes. So the journey to just, after what you shared about after basketball, I had the same journey. You get to the crossroads and you go, which way do I go? I've been here in the game. How do I do that in life? And that happens to a lot of athletes. My situation happened after the 2000 Olympics, after 5 Olympic Games. I was unemployed. I was self-employed, I should say. I was doing the exact same things you're doing, broadcasting, speaking, traveling. And all of a sudden my body said, hey, you're going to need insurance. You're going to need, you need to be well taken care of, because, basketball took care of me. Teams took care of me. Organizations took care of me forever. That no longer existed. And I met Dr. Lipman at the same time this was happening in my life. I had nowhere to go. And between the crossroads, and thank God it was a blessed conversation, the MRI, the consultation with him, he put me at ease. He was really, really, really trying to work ways to make it work for me. And just advised me the entire way. I really can, attribute that to blessings. And it just eased up. My mentality eased up. My emotional state of being and mind just said, just one day at a time, go with it, consultation, the next appointment, blah, blah, blah. And, amazing. He really wasn't that far from my house. I could have walked to his office, which was crazy. So I know that this man was meant for me. This procedure was meant for me. The process, I couldn't play basketball in comfort anymore. And after the procedure, I played pickup ball well past 45. Like, I'm still in the gym killing boys at 45. I'm feeling great. And I'm sharing this with anyone that mentions anything to do with pain, bloating, all the symptoms that goes with having fibroids. Any young lady that's sharing information, I'm sitting down having hour conversations with young ladies about this. You've got to reach out to Dr. Lipman. Here, I have his number. It's not that hard. I'll make the call for you. I'm pleading with you because it's amazing, like you said, how this process is life-changing, and it does not alter, it does not harm you. I was up in a week packing my house, to get to Minnesota or Tulsa. I can't even remember which team it was. I was packing my house to get there 10 days later. And I didn't believe him when he said that, but it was really true. So, here we go, Angela. Here we go, trying to not really convince people, but share a story that says, hey, you really don't have to live this way. And my life is totally fulfilled now. There's nothing I can do. I walked out of his, I kind of got pushed out by my sister, but out of his office door to the car home the same day, and not believing him. But Jesus, it's been a miracle in my life. So I have to share it. I share it with excitement. I share it with seriousness. And any information I don't know, I lead them directly to his offices.
Yeah. Well, so much I want to unpack about what you just said. But I want to start with when Teresa says that she is going to get on the phone and call Dr. Lipman on your behalf, she is speaking the truth. Again, one of the things that I have enjoyed about my journey and being able to interact with some of the elite athletes around the world is how great people they are. And I think sometimes that is missed when we just see them on the screen and we see them at their best. Teresa embodies that wholeheartedly. I actually, when I was getting ready to prepare for this episode, I went back through my emails just to kind of see what the journey was like. And the first email I had was an email where Teresa Edwards is introducing me to Dr. Lipman and saying, "Hey, Dr. Lipman, I'm checking in. Good to see you. How are you doing? Hey, I have a friend and a colleague that is going through something similar to what I was going through. And I would love for her to have the opportunity to see you if you have time." Like, you facilitate that conversation. You have a zillion things on your plate, but you facilitated that conversation. And so the first thing, as Black women, right, we always prioritize everybody else, but what is it for you that is so important for you to show up for others?
I'm led by my spirit, number one. It's such a natural thing. It seems to me the most human thing we can do if someone's in need. But I've been very fortunate to have some of the best sister friends around this world, not just this country, meeting young ladies like you, even though you're younger than me. You seem like you've always been a leader to me. I've always looked up to you, your professionalism, your intelligence. Oh my God, you're a Stanford grad. Come on, for God's sake. And all the Stanford friends I do have, I have to keep them very close to me. But I've really been very fortunate to embrace and to have a circle of great sister friends and a lot of brothers too around the world. But at the same time, I'm pretty much an open book when you meet me. If I let you in, I'm totally comfortable with you. And even when I'm not, I enjoy speaking to strangers. And for me, the journey in life wouldn't be worth it if I didn't have that part of me that was so natural. I think one time you told me, like, T, you're like a mystery. And really, I'm not. I'm a deep thinker. And I don't like wasting too much time on idle thoughts. And I'm easily bored when people are just having fun. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. You're having fun, so you're good. I can move over here. Like, that's kind of my mentality sometimes. That I'm glad you're having fun. I'm glad you're healthy. If anything I can do to help the next person, that is just who I am. So to to what you just said, to lend to what you just mentioned about how we take care of others before we take care of ourselves. I'm still that person. I have to be pushed. T, go to the dentist. I just had a toothache. Go to the doctor. You got to take, and I want to be healthy, but I think I just get it from my mother, natural state of personality, the type of person I am, and being in New York is not always a good thing. But I'm trying to hang on to myself.
Yeah, that's great. The true essence of a point guard. Right, giving the ball, setting people up for them to be successful.
That's right. That's it. Only take over when I have to. Only take over when I have to.
That is true. Well, I'm interested in hearing, like, we talked about how we have that common experience with the symptoms, but it sounds like it took you a while to get to the point where you actually went to seek treatment. What is that mentality? As athletes, right, you're having, ankles taped all the time and your physical ailments, like, right, you're having those taken care of. But I think sometimes as women, particularly around our reproductive systems and our health, we don't necessarily prioritize that. What was your mentality and how has that shifted for you at all?
Being an elite athlete is so different. My pain tolerance is very high, at least it was at that time. And a little cramp here or playing through that was nothing for me. And it's like, oh, it'll be over in a minute, or fight through it. Any trainer that I've ever had association with will tell you I stayed out of the training room as much as possible. If I'm in there, I'm really injured. But I think that mentality to be an elite athlete, to fight through processes, to get to the end results of winning, that's just that became my nature. And for most athletes, that's hard to reckon with the fact that you're actually in pain, you're actually hurting, there is something going on with your body. I really had to come to terms with that as a young lady. I'm still maturing and growing. My body is evolving and doing things I'm unfamiliar with. I don't claim to be a doctor, right? I go to the doctor so they can help me. So I had to sit down and go, listen, T, you're not 16, you're not even 25. You know, it's time to pay attention to your body and what's going on. And I couldn't control it. Normally it's 3 to 5 days. It was like you said, 5 to 10 days. Normally it's every 21 days, and it was happening every week or every other week or something. I'm like, this is something is not right here. You know, you would get yourself ready, go out the door. 10 minutes later, you're running right back in. You know, it's like, what is this? Traveling was a nightmare for me. Being on an airplane for more than 2 hours, scared to death. Things of that nature. You know, I just had to come to terms with life was changing, my body was changing, pay attention to it. And at the same time, there's a lot of fear when the insurance is involved.
Yeah.
That's a real fear. I was afraid to go to the doctors because I didn't have insurance in place.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate. Like even in the process, I was hired to go. I went back to work in coaching, and I ended up not having to use every resource that he offered to me. But in the case that I had to take that first step without having insurance in place was very hard. So I understand what you're going through. I understand the mentality. I'm talking to a young lady here in New York who has insurance, but she can't get down to Atlanta, and her insurance won't transfer there. Like and she's a distant relative of mine. My heart's just like, really, I'm still trying to figure out how do we make this happen, because she is in a point in her mind where she's like, well, I'll just do the best I can. I'll do whatever they can do for me here. No, don't settle. Yeah. This is your body. You got to feel great, Angela, because I feel great. I've never had a single issue since I've left this office, you know, and I still don't know what he did.
Exactly.
He did it, you know.
Exactly. You just know about the Band-Aid, and you're out of the office later that day.
And he didn't cut, and you know, I had I forget what the process, the treatment that, you know, that wasn't a treatment. I'd been in surgery before him. Okay. And what happened was I was told that, and it's really weird, it didn't connect. The doctor and my mother was speaking to me and my mother, she says, you know, we left a few in there the size of a pea. That didn't really correlate with me that they were going to grow again. I didn't know. Like, we don't know these things. And they grew into a monster. Yeah. And that's when I met Dr. Lipman, you know, and what he did was this small. Yeah. Amazing. I can't even tell he's there anymore. And I'm like, what did he do? And of course, I'll leave that to Dr. Lipman to explain to everyone. But it's just amazing. I can't, you know, I don't even know how to express it at a certain point here, because it's not something where you get an award from, but you get your life awarded back to you, right? Mm-hmm. So my joy is the health of it, the mentality, your mental mindset is so big. What you can give back to your world without thinking about it again. Yeah. You can't put a price tag on that.
No, that's true. I love how you said the award is that you get your life back. Yeah. And that is really the case. Like, it was isolating. There were events that I said no to because I couldn't trust, right, that I'd be able to take care of myself. Mm-hmm. And I sense now that I look back on it, I probably was in a mini depression, right? Like mm-hmm. the fatigue, the anemia, like all of those different mm-hmm. things, the embarrassments, mm-hmm. And not really understanding what you could do. And I wish, like, if I had read that article at the outset, right, like that 4-year period would have felt very different. Mm-hmm. I think mm-hmm. that's why these conversations are so incredibly important for us to continue having. So we're going to actually bring in Dr. Lipman, to Teresa's point, to find out more about the myths, the conversations he has with his patients, and why you should consider all of your treatment options, but make sure that you do have access and awareness about all the options, not just those that it feels like are overprescribed, but right. those that actually may help you get your life back sooner, and that aren't that invasive. So Teresa Edwards, thank you so much for your time. We're actually going to bring Teresa back here after our conversation with Dr. Lipman, to have kind of more of a roundtable discussion about how our life has changed with the UFE procedure.
You got it.
All right, we'll be back shortly with Dr. Lipman. Welcome back to Unlocking the Club. I'm your host, Angela Taylor, and it is a pleasure to introduce you all to Dr. John Lipman, MD, the individual that Teresa and I were just talking about, who has changed our lives with a very simple procedure, but a very powerful impact that it's had on our journey. Dr. Lipman, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's so timely, being Fibroid Awareness Month in July.
Absolutely. So glad that you answered the call as you did several years ago to be on the show and have this important conversation. And as you just heard in the conversation with Teresa, one of the things that has stood out to me, Dr. Lipman, about, it's not just the procedure, but it's how you actually are interacting with patients. My experience at the Atlanta Fibroid Center was remarkable because I felt like a human. I didn't feel like a patient, if you will. From the decor to the private room to actually having time with the doctor and having this conversation during the consultation. I think so often it feels like these days a consultation with a doctor lasts 5 minutes, right? And then maybe the nurse comes in or somebody else comes in and then they set up another appointment. But I've probably had about a 30, 45-minute conversation with you. Why is this a priority for you?
Well, it's extremely important. I set out on my own back in 2004, 2005. I just didn't like the way I was practicing medicine in a traditional hospital setting. It's just not what I envisioned. I wanted to be able to spend as much time with the patients as they needed, whether it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. We don't have any, quote, time slots. I'm not under pressure to see 60 patients, a day. I see far fewer patients. I take my time. We go into it, as you mentioned, in detail. And I wanted to practice the way I wanted to practice. And we started the Atlanta Fibroid Center. As you say, it's a standalone center. It is designed, we talk to many women, particularly African-American women, because those are the women primarily we serve. How would you like to receive healthcare? And we had a lot of focus groups, and women were obviously interested in quality, which we have. But the most important thing besides obvious quality was privacy. And so, as you mentioned, we have individual private rooms. A lot of outpatient centers have these corrals with little flimsy sheets, draw sheets, they pull curtains. That's not what we want. Every patient has their own private room. We have one patient, one nurse. Sometimes nurses in the hospital setting might be looking after 7, 8 patients or more. Every patient at the Atlanta Fibroid Center has their own private nurse whose only responsibility is to care for them until they leave, which is the same day of the procedure. So the things you saw at the center were purposeful. We want people to have an experience like the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons in healthcare. I've had numerous patients say, I can't believe everyone was so friendly, and I had just this most amazing experience. I've never felt like that in a healthcare setting. It's purposeful, and it's what drives us every day. And that positivity that radiates throughout our practice is infectious, and the patients pick up on it. And it just kind of begets upon itself, and it's very rewarding to me. I feel very fortunate to be able to work in a setting like that I have control over, and it's truly paradise. I must say I'm very blessed and appreciative that I can practice medicine like I want to practice, because many of my colleagues are experiencing physician burnout and retiring early, and I love coming to work every single day, and that's just not a cliche, it's true.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, because if you look at the data now, particularly as a result of COVID, right, the physician burnout is at an all-time high. Moral injury, right, is something that we're not talking enough about. But I also am appreciative of the intentionality that you had in designing the center. It did give me back my dignity. And I think for the other women that you were serving, giving their dignity back. I come from a long line of Black women in my family who talk often about having white coat syndrome. My mom would always say, like, right, she always got anxiety on her way to the doctor's office. And my experience was different because of your intentionality, and I appreciate that as well. And want actually, Dr. Lipman, for you to bring a little bit of context to what uterine fibroid are. And you heard Teresa and I talk about our journey, but what is it that our listeners should understand and know?
Well, they should understand that fibroids are extremely common in women, particularly women of color. 80% of African-American women, adult women, have these benign tumors. So fibroids are extremely common, particularly in African-American women. They're benign, they're not cancerous, but as you heard in the earlier discussions that you had with Teresa, they can cause absolute miserable symptoms. It's the number one reason why women have heavy periods. They cause pain, they cause urinary frequency, painful intercourse, sciatica, as you mentioned, a whole host of symptoms and misery, and everything that a woman does revolves, as you mentioned in your journey, everything revolved around your menstrual. You had to forego, things in your life. You may not be able to work certain days of the month. You may not be able to vacation, have relations. You had to know where every bathroom was. Patients will carry bags of extra clothing. They're wearing all sorts of heavy gear. And the amount of blood loss that they're losing every month, they can't possibly replace. And so they become increasingly tired and fatigued. And it is truly miserable, and it's completely unnecessary. There are over 1 million women in the country right now that are the silent sufferers. They don't want surgery, and I don't blame them, because most of the women that have suffered with fibroids get told they need a hysterectomy, particularly if they're done having their children. They don't want it. In fact, there was a recent study by the Mayo Clinic that showed that women waited on average 3.5 years to be treated, and a quarter of them waited over 5 years. And this delay in treatment is unnecessary, because UFE can be done in these patients, and they can get their life back immediately and not get this, you've suffered 4 years unnecessarily and kind of lost 4 years of your life. We can address this thing right now with these patients and give them their life back. It's transformational, and they don't have to suffer in silence. And that's one of the main issues, is this delay in treatment, because women aren't told by their gynecologist about UFE. They don't do it. They're not trained in it. And so they conveniently don't mention it in a lot of cases. And women don't want surgery, and I don't blame them for that either. I wouldn't want a hysterectomy.
Yeah. Yeah, so much resonated with me is what you were just sharing and it strikes me that if men were to have to go through some of the things that women go through with their bodies, how things would change, how the narrative would change, and how things would be prioritized, because it is debilitating and there are these myths. And the hysterectomy, I was reading some data when I was looking at my options back in the day, and I don't know if it's the same, Dr. Lipman, if the numbers are the same, but I think that hysterectomies were the second or third most frequent surgeries for patients in the United States.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. The hysterectomy is the second most common surgery done in the United States, which is very surprising, because half the population, men, don't have a uterus, yet it's the second most common surgery that we do. And the most common reason is not cancer, because if you have uterine cancer, that would be appropriate. But by far, the most common reason why we do hysterectomy in this country is for these benign tumors. So why are we essentially amputating Black women for benign disease? And these are young women. And hysterectomy changes women significantly for the negative. There are a lot of negative baggage issues that come with hysterectomy. Not only were these women not allowed to have children ever again, but they have a lot of other issues, psychological issues, losing your womb, your essence, sexual dysfunction, a lot of sexual loss of libido, loss of orgasm, urinary leaking after hysterectomy. If you go to the adult diaper section, what you should see is a picture of one of my parents who are in their 90s. You won't see that. What you'll see is an attractive 35 to 40-year-old African-American woman on the package. Why? Because that's the target. And we got to stop this. We got to stop doing hysterectomies for benign disease. And, it's one of these things that kind of comes with a delay in treatment. You talked about the heaviness of the flow and so forth. Some women just feel like, I've been doing the heavy flow for so long, that's normal for me, or that's normal for my family. I asked my mom, she was a heavy bleeder, I'm a heavy bleeder. No, that's not normal. I know you've been doing it a long time. I'll show you what's normal after a UFE, but that's a problem in delay of treatment. There is the mentality of, you talked about just keeping it moving. I wrote a blog piece on my website, Doc, I just got to keep it moving. Women in the workplace, they didn't have the time to be off 8 weeks after a hysterectomy, so they couldn't afford the time off. Maybe they couldn't afford it, to be off from work. They were just kind of pushing it through. They also felt an obligation, not only because they might be the only woman in the workplace that may be working with men who don't understand about women's periods and having to find the bathroom and being off, from work. They may not understand those issues. They might be the only woman of color. And so they were not only thinking about themselves, but they were thinking about the next hire. If I let the other women down, or if I let other women of color down, the next hire is not going to be someone that looks like me. I mean, incredible, mental fortitude. And they also don't want surgery. And that was when they looked at the study, the vast majority of women didn't want hysterectomy. They didn't want surgery, and they weren't told about this non-surgical option, UFE. So it's multifactorial. It's even, that we have a history in this country, particularly I practice in Atlanta, as you mentioned, in the South, the Mississippi appendectomies, the Fannie Lou Hamers, these unnecessary surgeries performed on Black women. There is a mistrust. Obviously, we've got to address that issue, a mistrust of doctors. You mentioned the white coat hypertension. It's because we do have this kind of ugly history with hysterectomy in this country, particularly the South. And, I feel for that. Imagine a white physician talking to an audience of several hundred Black women about the Tuskegee experiment. So I have an appreciation, and understand our history and understand the apprehension that an African-American woman might have in my care. But, we try to do everything possible to try to, put patients at ease and reassure them that, I'm going to tell you all your options and you're going to decide.
Now, I appreciate so much about what you just unpacked and unlocked about, right, the system that we're navigating as women, and in particular as Black women, and the psyche, the mindset that we have, because we have that history that wasn't so long ago. And that impacts decisions that we certainly make and access that we have to resources such as yourself. It struck me as you were talking about the hysterectomies, and that is the second most frequent surgery in the United States. Can we unlock, why is that? It feels like it's not, certainly not from a health or reproductive care perspective. It feels like there's some capitalism that is influencing that.
Yes,
a little bit.
There's certainly, medicine has been, made into a business. A lot of pressures have kind of made medicine a business. And so, yes, I'm sure the gynecologist is facing economic pressures to perform these procedures. There's you've got to keep your skills up. Some of the newer ways to do hysterectomy, laparoscopic and robotic, require a certain minimum number of procedures to be done. And the hospital buys this expensive equipment and puts pressure on doctors to keep their numbers up. The hospital wants to make money. There's pressure. So there's economic pressure. Certainly, you'd like to hope that wouldn't be a factor, but it is. And so, that's part of it. It's hard to change doctors' patterns. Certainly, the drug manufacturers know that. They get a doctor to prescribe a certain medication, and it's hard to get them to change it. We've been doing hysterectomies for fibroids for a long time, and there's a long history of doing hysterectomy. It's hard to change people's patterns, but all the gynecologists now know about UFE. We've been doing UFE in this country for the past 25 years, so it's well proven, safe and effective. It has the highest level of medical evidence for safety, for efficacy, so it works. There's no question about it, and all the doctors throughout the country, gynecologists included, know about it. So they can't say, well, we never heard about it or we don't know about it. they need to know about it. They do. They can refer to interventional radiologists. There's some economic pressure from referring to somebody else, because then you lose that hysterectomy. Sometimes the gynecologist might seem that it's +1 for me and -1 for them, but it's not. As you mentioned, there are a lot of patients, the silent sufferers, they don't want hysterectomy, and they're suffering with this. And you can mention UFE, and they can get their life back. And this procedure is incredible. It's a 30 to 40-minute procedure. They go home the same day with a Band-Aid, as you mentioned. The recovery is about 5 days at home. So it's safer, it's less invasive. It treats all the fibroids, no matter how big or how many. It's truly one of the biggest medical breakthroughs for women, particularly women of color. But the biggest issue is nobody, relatively speaking, knows about it, despite a 25-year history of safety and efficacy.
So if one of our listeners is experiencing some of the symptoms that you've talked about and that Teresa and I have shared, what should they do? So what is the process when they go to their doctor and they have this discussion and they discover that they do have fibroids? What should the process look like from start to finish?
Well, if they have fibroids, if their symptoms, whether it's heavy bleeding, pelvic pain, urinary frequency, whatever it is symptom-wise, and if it's due to fibroids, then they have to know about UFE. And if they're not hearing it from their doctor, they've got to, get a second opinion from an interventional radiologist like myself, who can then go over the symptoms with even better imaging than the gynecologist uses. The gynecologist will use pelvic ultrasound, and that's it's kind of a low resolution imaging tool of the pelvis. They have them in their office, so it's very easy to perform and they can get it right there. So it's easy and convenient, but it's really low resolution. It doesn't give you the detail that you really get with an MRI of the pelvis, which we get in our patients, and show the patients exactly how many fibroids they have, how big, where they're located, and how, depending on their location, will determine their symptoms. The fibroids that are located along the lining in the central part of the uterus cause the heavy bleeding. The ones in the front of the uterus will press on the bladder, which sits right in front of the uterus. Ones in back can press on pelvic nerves to cause pain or constipation, because the colon is right behind the uterus. So depending on where the fibroids are, you can see the patient's symptoms and see if it fits with the imaging. And if so, if their symptoms are truly due to the fibroids, UFE is tremendous. It's also helpful because a lot of times patients will say, well, I know I have 2 fibroids or 3 fibroids. We've been following them with pelvic ultrasound with my gynecologist, and we get the MRI and there's 15, 20, 30 or more. The ultrasound underestimates the number, and that's important when you have issues where you want to maintain fertility, because the surgical option is no longer hysterectomy, it's myomectomy. And surgically, if you have 30, 40, or 50 fibroids, like a lot of my patients do, you can't remove them all. And so what happens commonly with myomectomy is they remove what they can, usually the bigger ones. And then within 2, 3, or 4 years, all the symptoms are back, because the ones they left behind start growing, and the small ones over several years become big ones. And so they go, oh, those darn fibroids, they're back. Well, that's kind of a white lie. They're not back. It's the ones the surgeon, didn't take out the first time. So there is an 11% per year rate of recurrence with myomectomy. So I commonly see patients in my practice that have had 2 or 3 myomectomies, as many as 5, and they're coming to me for the next treatment. Now, the UFE knocks out all the fibroids. So typically it's a one and done, which is great, because you don't need to keep doing these repetitive myomectomies. You can do one, but in my opinion, after the first myomectomy, every patient after that should get UFE.
That's great. So what should we consider from a preventative standpoint? Are there things that you can do to minimize or reduce the likelihood that you do get fibroids?
There are some strategies you can do if your symptoms are mild, particularly, or you don't have fibroids that you're aware of at all. You can start on the journey. If you're an African-American adult woman, you can do some of these strategies before you even know that you have fibroids, because likely at some point in your life you're going to have them. Hopefully they won't cause significant symptoms. We call those fibroids passenger fibroids because they just ride along in the uterus, and if they don't cause symptoms and they don't bother you, you don't have to bother them. Unfortunately, there's a lot of women that have fibroids that are not symptoms like you had and like Teresa had, and so then something needs to be done about it. But some of the preventative kind of strategies, nobody knows where fibroids come from, and that's another issue. We need more research into fibroids, and there is pending legislation in both the House and the Senate on the Stephanie Tubbs Jones Fibroid Research and Education Act, which is really important. Hopefully we can get that legislation passed. It provides much needed research to the NIH, as well as important funding to the CDC to help get the word out about UFE and some of these other non-surgical approaches to doctors and the lay community. But so nobody knows where fibroids come from, but once they arrive, they grow with estrogen. So we try an anti-estrogenic approach, if you will, which includes a number of things. One is there are some estrogen hormone-rich foods, if you will. Red meat, non-organic chicken, and dairy are the big offenders. So if you can try to work around those, that's going to be helpful. Estrogen is stored and produced in body fat. One of the reasons African-American women disproportionately suffer with fibroids is, in general, they have more body fat than other racial groups. Asian women have the lowest body fat and the lowest incidence of fibroids. Now, that's not the only issue. It certainly contributes, but because I see a lot of very fit, low body fat African-American women in my practice that have very big fibroids. There's also genetic components that you can't do anything about. It kind of runs in families, but if you can kind of block estrogen through eating more colored fruits and vegetables, which have flavonoids in them, which block an enzyme that's important in estrogen production, exercise, lose that excess body fat, try to avoid those hormone-rich foods, and then lastly, vitamin D. Vitamin D is really important. It's technically not a vitamin, it's a hormone, but it's the most powerful anti-fibroid growth hormone that we have. And so only 10% of African-American men or women have adequate vitamin D. It has to do with the pigmentation of the skin. The darker the pigmentation, the harder it is to get vitamin D. I also have low vitamin D. I guess I spend too much time in the office. I don't get enough sunlight, but it's really important. It's also good against COVID. I mean, as far as boosting immunity, helping to ward that off. So it's important to get your vitamin D level checked because that's easy to supplement and get you to the appropriate level. And women with normal vitamin D levels have a much lower incidence of fibroids. And so if you can do kind of the exercise dietary things, it's good for fibroid prevention. It's also good for cardiovascular health. Vitamin D, to say it's really important. So there are some things you can do to help mitigate the symptoms and try to prevent you from suffering with fibroids.
I definitely remember you mentioning vitamin D as being something that to consider and that I started actually supplementing moving forward. Thank you for that insight and perspective about things that we can do just to make sure that we are managing our health. Is there any other advice, Dr. Lipman, that you would have for women that are experiencing something like this?
Well, if you're suffering with fibroids, no matter what your gynecologist tells you, you don't have to have a hysterectomy. That is so important. Get a second opinion, from an interventional radiologist, as I mentioned, like myself, that sees a lot of fibroid patients. So you don't have to have surgery. It's an option, but in my opinion, it should be an option of last resort. Also, when you go to your doctor to talk about your fibroids, bring somebody with you. That can be a person, a friend, any other person, because sometimes when patients go to the doctor and they hear, well, you need hysterectomy, all of a sudden it's like hearing the word cancer. It's like, oh my gosh, that's so invasive. And you almost don't hear anything else. And then they don't remember any of the other things of the conversation. So bring questions, this is a two-way street. It's not doctor telling patient anymore. It's not this paternalistic thing. We want a two-way conversation. And so arm yourself with questions about fibroids and about what's going on with your symptoms. too many times women think their periods are normal because they've done it for so long. And so we talk a lot about a woman's periods in our consultation. If you go to the doctor and you feel like you're not being listened to or you're being dismissed, there are plenty of other doctors. Don't settle for that. Nobody knows your body better than you. And so if something is not right, it's probably not right. And you need to get that looked into. We'll see a lot of patients say, well, I went to my gynecologist and I wasn't, he drew my blood and my hemoglobin level wasn't that low. And so we're just not going to do anything about my periods right now. We're doing this watchful waiting where, and so they go from this watchful waiting where they just do nothing to all of a sudden hysterectomy next year. It's like, wow, it's like from 0 to 60, like there's nothing else. And most women won't hear about UFE. And that's a real shame. I mean, everyone is entitled to know all their options, not just the surgical ones that the gynecologist does. You need to know about all your options so you can make the best informed decision for you and your body.
Yeah. Well, just listening to you and in this conversation with Teresa, it's bringing me back to that time and is underscoring why this conversation is so important for us to have. Like, we need to make sure that young women, right, before they get to the point where they may start to have fibroids, that they understand what their options are and they can ask those questions and they can be their own best advocate in their medical process and journey. And so Dr. Lipman, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for the passion with which you are doing this work. I can feel it in our conversation of why this is so important to you. And I'm grateful that you're committed to, again, changing the trajectory for women that are suffering from uterine fibroids.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity very much. And to say that the conversation sometimes can be difficult. There's a lot of taboos about talking about periods, whether it's amongst family members or, girlfriends, but the conversation is so important. We've got to start the conversations and break this taboo about, talking about periods, and men need to know about it. We love when men come out to our seminars that we do about fibroids, because a lot of times men just don't understand. And, the perfect example was when we treated Cynthia Bailey from Real Housewives. She was married at the time to Peter, who didn't understand. All he thought was, well, I'm not getting relations anymore. She must not love me. Well, couldn't be farther from the truth. The problem was she was bleeding so heavily and anemic and wearing adult diapers for this heavy flow that she would get. She didn't feel sexual. She was tired and weak from the anemia. That was the problem, not that she didn't love Peter. And once we did the UFE, she got her life back, her anemia resolved, she got the energy, she wasn't wearing any diapers anymore. And as she told me, you gave me my sexy back, and then their relations resumed. And so it's important for men to understand this as well. The conversations have to happen throughout, men and women amongst themselves, families, it runs in families. So talk to your daughters, and just everyone should know about this. So being more informed and not afraid to talk about such subjects.
That is such an important point. This is not just something that women should have to confront and face. Like, the men in our lives should also be aware that, or anybody, understand what we're going through, so it demystifies so many of these things that we're sensing. And to Cynthia's point, right, we can get our sexy back. To Teresa and my point, we can get our lives back. So Dr. Lipman, thank you for that. We're actually going to be back here in a minute and have a discussion on the back nine with both Dr. Lipman and with Teresa Edwards. Stay tuned for more of this conversation. This is Angela Taylor. Welcome to the Back Nine. I'm here with Dr. John Lipman MD and Teresa Edwards, and we've just had a really important conversation about the experience that we have as Black women with fibroids and the work that Dr. Lipman is doing at the Atlanta Fibroid Center to help change the trajectory of our lives so that we can get our sexy back, so we can get our lives back through this process and this journey. One thing that showed up in our conversations with both of you was that you both are extremely passionate about this conversation. Right? It'd be easy just to move forward, to do your work, Dr. Lipman, Teresa, just to move forward with your life. Why is it important for us to have this conversation, particularly during Fibroid Awareness Month? Teresa, I'll start with you.
For me, it's important because we're gonna meet people, and I know people. I know even my nieces today. I'm having conversations with them. I'm trying to get them and introduce them to Dr. Lipman. He's so empowering. Just listening to you, both of you have your conversation. We're really, really lucky, blessed that he's passionate about what he does, how he does it. I don't really think you understand the impact you have on the lives that you're changing. And I'm just really, really, I know we're fortunate to have you and have you do what you do at the level in which you do it. And as Angela said, you're so passionate about it. You're very articulate about it. You have a very common presence about you that allows us to have these conversations. Now, listen, you got two Black women here and you're a white man. Listen, that speaks volume. I appreciate you standing for us. And I don't mean to take this down this road, but I just can't help but share that with you while I'm in this moment with you, Dr. Lipman, because I'm gonna keep passing it on. And I know you work so hard to get in touch with me sometimes. And as Angela mentioned, we have such busy lives, but I'm always available to try to have a conversation and I think I owe it to the next woman to get through what we've gone through to arrive where I am today in this freedom that I live in because of what that procedure has done for my life. So Angela, I owe it to the next one and any others.
That is so true.
I appreciate you, Teresa, so much because, you have brought attention to this really important matter. And, we still don't do very many UFEs. We could be doing way more. And if it wasn't for, your bravery in coming out with your story, I mean, it's not easy to talk about. You're in the limelight. You're an Olympic star. And, you could easily just keep that to yourself. And bringing the attention to this very important story, I am very appreciative of what you've done and what, Cynthia did and some other celebrities using the platform. They have a voice that so many people look up to you and follow you. And, we don't do enough UFEs as it is. So few women would probably get UFE if it wasn't for your bravery. And so we're hoping to amplify that message and so that every woman just knows this option. I mean, it's simple. They should know about this. And yet, despite doing this for 25 years, still, relatively speaking, nobody knows about it.
And, it's not about being the titles either. It's not about being an Olympian or who I am, as Teresa Edwards. What it is like, I'm woman, I'm human, and there's many women like me out there.
But I want to echo what Dr. Lipman said, T, because you have so many things on your plate, so many people coming to you, making requests. I'm one of those people, right? Reaching out to you saying, T, can you get on Unlocking the Club? The choice to share your private life is a really important one. And Dr. Lipman, as you were answering a question earlier in the show, it had me thinking back to the day. I remember when I was in high school and actually when I went on to college, I didn't like to go to the store to purchase tampons. Like, right? I didn't want to be seen putting it on the conveyor belt, right? So my mom would literally send me care packages with tampons because she knew I didn't want to see them. Like, right? Or when we get them in the house when I was growing up, right? She would sneak them into my room or to my bathroom so my brothers and my dad didn't have to see. Like, this is what was going through my mind. It was such a private thing. And as a woman, I didn't want to reveal that to others. So T, what you did to share your story really is going to have an impact. And that's why this is important. That's why I'm coming out of my comfort zone and having this conversation as well. So grateful to you. And Dr. Lipman, T was right. Like it's ironic, as I was getting ready for this episode, you were the first white man on Unlocking the Club. So welcome, you get that honor. I don't know how much of an honor it is, but for a specific reason, because of the impact that you had on my life and the impact that you had on Teresa's life and your passion for this work. And I am curious Why is this important to you?
Well, I mean, as I say, I was doing embolization of tumors, mostly cancerous tumors, before UFE was discovered. So I was helping patients who were suffering with particular cancers that were involving the liver and trying to give them a better quality of life. It wasn't curative in many of the cases. It was palliation in a lot of it. But we were giving them a better quality of life. And I was invited to speak at a national radiology meeting, which the meeting I never go to, because they're interventional radiology is just a very small subset of the bigger radiology house, and that meeting really wasn't applicable to me. But I was invited to share my data on this embolization, and I went to the meeting, and I gave my 10-15-minute talk on what I was doing, and the place where we were speaking at was could fit like 1,000 people, because it's a big meeting. It's the biggest radiology meeting of the year. There's probably tens of thousands of radiologists there, and this big auditorium, but there were only maybe 10 or 15 people listening to my talk, and others. And so after I gave my talk, instead of just leaving, I sat in the audience because I felt bad. There was nobody there at this huge auditorium. No one was there to listen. And a couple speakers after me was the Scott Goodwin, who did the first 11 patients, UFE patients in the country. UFE was discovered completely by accident. We've been doing it for cancerous tumors, but there was an investigator in France that decided to do this before hysterectomy to make it an easier surgery. Well, in France, you got to wait 6, 7, or 8 weeks for your elective surgery. So they get embolized with a UFE, and then they were discharged, and they would wait 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. Well, what happened? Their symptoms started going away. So these women in France called their gynecologist and said, I feel great. Do I still need to have my hysterectomy because all my symptoms are gone? So the answer was no, you didn't need to have that second part. You could just have UFE. And so that gynecologist called his friend at UCLA and said, you better look at this. This is an amazing thing. And so Scott was presenting the first 11 patients in the United States. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. I'm in Atlanta. I could really be helpful to a lot of people if I started doing this. And we did the first one here in Georgia back in 1996 or 7, and have been doing them ever since, and have the largest experience now worldwide. It's just a tremendous procedure, and God put me there because I never go to that meeting. As I say, normally I would just walk off the stage, but I sat and I heard Scott speak, so I know I was placed there on purpose.
So I'm grateful that there was only a handful of people that were in attendance at your speech and that you stayed to listen to Scott's speech. That has changed, right, many lives as a result of it. I want to pivot a little bit from this conversation about uterine fibroids to a conversation about both of you. And Teresa, I'll start with you. As we're talking about women and women's health, I think it's really important for us to understand how we can be in wellness. So I'm wondering for you on your journey, how do you find the space and the time to be in wellness?
I've embraced eating much better. As an athlete, I felt like in my younger years, I could eat whatever I want to eat, and I could still go out on the court and play all day and never impacted my body, my fat. I didn't feel fat. I was a very skinny kid early on. And then as I, retired from the game, everything changed. And I'm truly learning the value of nutrition. I'm learning the value of rest. I'm learning the value of just self-help, self-care, and taking it on. I really don't work out, and people still think I can play the game. So I think I'm doing something correct, but then I found myself embracing walking more, or taking steps instead of elevators in my old days. So I'm pivoting again, but I value my body because as Dr. Lipman mentioned earlier, the financial part associated in the medical field kind of scares me. My mistrust in things scares me. So I want to do everything I can. I want my medical treatment to be my nutrition now.
So important. That's so important. Thanks, T. Yeah. Dr. Lipman, how about you? How do you center yourself or be in wellness?
Well, as Teresa said, I mean, you only have one body, and you've got to take care of it. Try to do the things, that I can do. I'm kind of a food and wine guy, so I've got to kind of moderate that, everything in moderation. And so, I exercise when I can. I love sports. I love playing sports. Try to keep doing it. I'm getting up there in age, and just try to do the things you can do and realize the limits of your age and your body, and just enjoy. I mean, we're not here very long, and we only have one body. We try to do the best we can while we're here.
Yeah, so true. I think that over the last 2 years, that has really rung true for me, is how important just being in the moment, right? And making the most of your life and the opportunities that you have is. With that in consideration, Dr. Lipman, what's on your bucket list? What's one thing on your bucket list that you want to do? And Teresa, I'll follow up with the same question for you.
Well, we want to continue to try to expand the message. We're releasing a documentary, hopefully before the end of the month. We've been working with a group that won awards for their documentary work called on period poverty. We recognize that and have helped in donating to causes. A number of women in third world countries, particularly Africa, don't have the sanitary products. I mean, some of the conditions are just ridiculous for young women to not have any sanitary products, or using shirts or towels, or just awful, and trying to provide them. And so we saw their work, and they're now going to do a documentary on exactly the issues we talked about today, an awareness about UFE and how tremendous this procedure is, and that you don't have to have surgery for fibroids. And we're excited about the documentary. They're incredible crew to work with, and we're really hopeful that someone will look at this and really try to, whether it's a Netflix or an HBO, somebody hopefully will pick this up and really broadcast the message. We have such an important message, and that's what we want to get out there. And hopefully, after all these years, maybe we'll be successful. But that's been my mission from day one. And 25 years later, it's still my mission one.
Well, thank you for prioritizing this. And I can't wait for the documentary to be widely available to view. T, how about you? What's on your bucket list?
So let me make it a little fun. Dr. Lipman is saving the world. I'm trying to save me. I think one thing on my bucket list is to travel this country in a car and just kind of see all the things I didn't get to see. Playing basketball, I was able to travel the world. But what people don't understand is we're often from a bus to a hotel, from the hotel back to a bus to a gymnasium or an arena, and performing and going right back to bed, So my bucket list is to travel from east to west to see everything in between. And that's just one thing that I'm counting on. So Dr. Lipman, I'm planning on having a little more fun. I'm here for you.
Maybe you can drive to Colorado and through the Pacific Northwest to see the documentary at Sundance or one of those film festivals. That could be the theme of your trip. But I love that. And Teresa, I just watched Dream On. A fantastic documentary on ESPN about the 95 national team, 96 Olympic team that brought home gold in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And I get you guys are in Siberia, on the bus, hotel, in the gyms. And so I love that you want to travel the country via car. Make sure you come to Idaho. You know somebody here.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I could be in conversation with you both all day, but I know you have more important things to do. Would love to give you a chance, starting with you, Dr. Lipman. What do you have going on? Where can our listeners find you?
Well, it's pretty easy to find me, particularly with the internet these days. We have a website, atlii.com, atlii.com. We have a YouTube channel with over 150 videos on fibroids and on the UFE procedure. That's Atlanta Fibroid Center. And then we have an Instagram page. People like Instagram is very visual. That's DR_ my last name. So it's DR_LIPMAN.
Fantastic. All right. We will definitely check out. That's a lot of resources on YouTube specifically. And if you are experiencing any of the symptoms that Teresa and I shared, please reach out to the Atlanta Fibroid Center or your doctors, and they will recommend somebody that you can go to as well. Teresa, how about you? I know you have a lot going on. You have a book, Black Gold, that you released and is available on Audible. Where else can people find you, and what do you have going on?
Easy to find. The only thing that makes it hard is I only, dive into my social media when I'm actually doing things. So I'm sorry, I'm old school with that. But at the same time, I'm literally official TeresaEdwards.com website. I'm rebuilding that, hoping to launch a new website next month where we can unpack and unload the books, as well as a little apparel line. I'm wearing, this first time, 5-time thing, that logo that I created for myself, being the first 5-time Olympian. Now that Diana and Sue Bird has caught me, I got to still distinguish myself. But having fun with that and just doing me. I love writing, Angela. I'm going to continue to write. I want to tell women's sports stories that haven't been told. I think that's the only stories that really haven't been told these days. So I embrace those stories about the newcomers, the old ladies that I ran up and down the court with, all the great legends out there. I want to help them tell their stories, or just watch them tell their stories. So I'm going to keep writing. I'm going to keep working with the kids. I love the summers because I get that freedom. And, when the fall rolls back around, spring, I'm going to be back in school and doing my thing there. So I'm just here. So look out for me with official TeresaEdwards.com, my IG and all that stuff. You'll see me periodically.
Awesome. We will have that information in our show notes, and make sure that you check out both websites. And that first 5-time Olympian, definitely going to try to rock that. So we'll be looking for that. I have to leave with one story just to share, and Dr. Lipman humored me a little bit. But the first time that I had a chance to meet the legendary Teresa Edwards. So if you're a women's basketball player, you certainly had followed Teresa's career. And as Teresa came out to Stanford one spring, as she was getting ready to train for national team, and would play pickup with us. And I wasn't very good. This was after my freshman year. I was a walk-on to the women's basketball team at Stanford. So I was just happy to be on the team, frankly, right? And to be able to compete at practice. But there was one particular moment, I was on the opposite team of Teresa's. I'm handling the ball. And so as Teresa is defending me, she's telling me what I should be doing and the reason why I should be doing that. And that was because she was going to steal the ball from me. And as I'm processing the advice she was giving me, she stole the ball and went in the other direction, right? That's greatness right there. But certainly loved and appreciated the competitive nature with which Teresa played, but also giving back. And in that moment, she's trying to get better, also making sure that others are getting better as well. So that is etched in my memory, as well as many other plays that we still talk about to these days, Teresa, about you passing behind the back, half court passes behind the back, and some of the remarkable things that you were able to do, and appreciate all you have meant to women's basketball and women's sports as well.
Very Jordan-esque.
Very Jordan. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been Unlocking the Club. I really appreciate our special guests, Teresa Edwards and Dr. John Lipman, for joining us here in Fibroid Awareness Month to talk about a really important topic. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I hope you got a tidbit of information that may help you, your sister, your aunt, your cousin, your friend, or anybody. Please share this information with the women in your life. This can change their life for sure. Again, thanks for joining us for Unlocking the Club. You can find out where to follow us in the show notes. Make sure that you listen, subscribe, and review our podcast. And until next time, take care.
Thanks for listening to Unlocking the Club. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or your favorite streaming platform so that you can experience every episode. And follow us on social media, where you'll hear about future guests, access special features, and connect with this amazing community. Head on over there and let us know how you are unlocking the club. Until next time, peace.